I'm Sarah, Sarah Benson. I'm one of the 3 wine buyers here at Co-op. And this evening, you're going to be meeting Vivianna Navarrete, who you could probably see in your top left-hand corner of the screen. If you want to give us a wave, she's very modest, so she won't tell you that she was proclaimed one of the top 12 winemakers in the world by Wine Enthusiast. She's also won Best Winemaker in Chile and a host of other awards, so she's very good at what she does. And actually this year is the 10th year anniversary of when we've been buying wine from Vivianna and Vinya Leyda, so it's great that 10 years on she's here to tell the story a little bit about the wine. Just before she starts talking a little bit more about the story behind the wine, just if you've got any questions you want to ask, if you want to post them in the Q&A. So we did previously do these sessions on Zoom, so I appreciate that this might be a little bit of a different layout for you. So but the Q&A should be at the top of your screen, and you can just post questions in there. And if you particularly want our questions to be answered, you can give a thumbs up and make it really important that we answer the question, and we'll try and get to them as they come in. So Vivianna is going to tell you a little bit this evening about 2 wines. One is our Irresistible Sauvignon Blanc from Leyda Valley, and one is a rosé, which is a combination of Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir. Now, outside of Europe, you can blend red and white grapes together, which is what we've done here with 5% Pinot Noir and the rest Sauvignon Blanc. But in Europe, you can get the colour from rosé comes from the skins. So it's a very different way of making rosé. And it's something we came up with together when we visited a couple of years ago now, Vivianna, when we were saying, well, Sauvignon Blanc is so popular. It's the most popular grape variety in the UK. And so is rosé. Rosé is growing astronomically. December just gone, it outperformed red and white wine. It's becoming so trendy. So it seems a shame when Vivianna makes brilliant Sauvignon to not have a look at, well, what can we do with a rosé? So hopefully you may have them there with you. Feel free to taste along with us, or just to listen to what Vivianna has to say. So I'll let Vivianna do a bit more of the talking now. So over to you, Vivianna. She's got some nice pictures to show you so you can get a sense of the story behind the wine.
Thanks very much, Sarah. I'm very happy with this invitation. It's an honor for me to be with you today. It's your 7 p.m. there in England. Here we are at 4 p.m. in Chile. I'm in the cellar right now. We are just in the middle of the harvest, crushing grapes, Pinot Noir and Sauvignon Blanc. So it's a lot of energy outside in this room. But really want to thank you for the opportunity and for joining us today to speak a little bit about the work that we're doing here in Leyda Winery in Chile. And of course, to speak a little bit about the wines that we are sharing with you today. So, as Sarah said, we have been working with COP for 10 years now, making this beautiful Sauvignon Blanc, and since 2 years ago, the Rosé, which is the idea and the baby of Sarah. She was the one that had the idea, so we went with her with a lot of energy and with this beautiful idea of making a blush with Sauvignon Blanc. So for those of you who are not very familiar with our country, well, actually, I'm the winemaker of Leyda Winery. It's in Chile. I've been working in the winery for 16 years now. And Chile is a very long and narrow country located in South America. And as you may see in the picture, it's crazy. We have 4,000 kilometers of coastline. So here comes the point. Many people around the world think that Chile is everything about Cabernet Sauvignon and Carmenère and Merlot. Our country is really related to red wines. And that is okay, because in the past, in the 80s, it was what we sell. And mainly all the wine production was in this area, in the center of Chile. And of course, we focus in the red grapes variety. But here comes the interesting thing. About 25 years ago, many wineries started to look into the coastline of Chile, because we have 4,000 kilometers of coastline and nobody planted in this area because it's extreme weather. We are next to the Pacific Ocean, which is freezing cold, and it was an extreme viticulture. So it was expensive, low yields, and a lot of targets. So some crazy people start to look to places in the north of Chile and discover new valleys. The same exercise was done in the center of Chile, where Leyda Winery was one of these pioneer people, and even down south. So today in Chile, you see there are a lot of new valleys up north, down south, pushing boundaries, and of course in our coast, developing valleys that are more focused into white grapes varieties and Pinot Noir, which has been amazing because it shows that Chile can be a place for producing high quality wines and reds as Pinot Noir. And here in this map, what happened because of this development of new valleys in Chile is that since 6 years ago, we started to group the different valleys depending on the place that they were located. So sometimes people think that the biggest difference between the valleys in Chile, talking about the soil composition, the geography, and the climate, the main difference between the valley is how north or how south the valley is. But because our topography is a narrow country, the main difference of climate between the valley is how close or how far the valley is from the Andes Mountain, that it runs up from north to south, or from the coastal mountain that also runs up from north to south. And in this way, what you see in orange color are all the valleys that are in the Piedmont of the Andes Mountain. This means they are valleys that have big different temperature between day and night, mainly volcanic soil. Then what you see in green is the valley that are in the Central Valley, which has more sandy soils, higher temperatures, warmer, so a paradise for reds. And then the places that you see in light blue color are all the valleys that are in the coastline with lower temperatures, very windy, fresher areas, so more concentrated in the production of whites and Pinot Noir. This is a zoom, is a Google Map picture where you see, like, this is the zoom of this area. So this here is Santiago located, that is our main capital. So this is a zoom where you see the Andes Mountain at the right, then you see the Central Valley, where is Santiago, our main capital. In this place is Maipo Valley. For those who know this appellation, is one of the best places in Chile for growing Cabernet Sauvignon. Then you have the coastal mountain range here. In the right side of the coastal mountain range, you find Casablanca Valley, which it used to be the best valley in the 80s for growing whites. Actually, it was the first valley to be developed in Chile, who started to show the potential of our country for growing white grapes variety. And in the west side of the coastal mountain range is Leyda Valley located, where we take the grapes for doing this beautiful Irresistible Sauvignon Blanc. Leyda Valley is located in the west side of the coastal mountain range. Casablanca is in the east side of the coastal mountain range. So they are both cold climate, but Leyda is much cooler because it is at only 12 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean. This is a picture that I love. It shows our place. There in the back of the photograph, you see the Andes Mountain. Then you have the Central Valley. Here you have the coastal mountain range. And in the west side of the coastal mountain range is Leyda Valley. This is the Maipo River. And in the bottom will be the Pacific Ocean. So as you see in the picture, it's a very dry area. That's why there was no viticulture in the past. Leyda Winery is the pioneer of Leyda Valley. I think today in the world, you hear a lot of wineries that are trying to be pioneers or discover new places, be the first one in arriving into a place. Well, Leyda Winery was the pioneer of Leyda Valley. That happened 24 years ago, and that's why we have the name of the valley. So the thing is that we were the first crazy people to arrive in this place. We registered the brand Leyda Winery because the name of the town is Leyda. And afterwards, when we started planting the first vine, we went to the agricultural ministry and asked for the creation of a new appellation of origin, which of course had to take the name of the local town that it was Leyda. That's why it's Leyda Winery in Leyda Valley. We were the first one to plant vines here. And why there was no viticulture before? Because as you see in the photograph, it's a dry area. We receive only 250 millimeters of rainfall a year. That's nothing for growing vines naturally. So to start with the first plantation of vines, we had to do a huge investment. The owners of Leyda Winery, together with the government and some private, had to take water of this river that is called the Maipo River and build an 8 kilometers pipeline. This is the road, under this road is the pipeline, to take water from the Maipo River and through this pipeline, be able to start irrigating the first vineyards that were planted in this area. This is at 12 kilometers from the ocean. This picture of this vineyard that you are seeing right now is at 4 kilometers to the Pacific Ocean. So it was a huge investment, but thanks to that, we were able to start with the first planting that were done back 24 years ago. And now the total valley has 1,800 hectares. So it's still small. I always compare this valley with Barolo in Italy, for you to keep in mind that it's an exclusive and small place, almost a paradise. Sarah has been there in the vineyard. It's like everything about small rolling hills you see, and it's perfect. And in the back there, up in the photo, there's the Pacific Ocean. So actually when you are in the vineyard, you see the ocean and you understand that really Chile can have a unique place for growing whites and have good, high quality white wines. And this photograph is the same vineyard that I showed to you before. And here is one of the vineyards, that is El Granito Vineyard. This is the Maipo River, and there's the Pacific Ocean. So when you are standing in this vineyard, you are at 4 kilometers from the ocean, and you can see there's no barrier at all. You have no barriers to the cold winds that runs up from the sea, no barriers to the fog, the morning fog that comes from the ocean, and of course the low temperature that we have during the whole year. In general, we have 13 Celsius degrees during the whole year. That's very low compared to the average valleys here in Chile. And why do we have this cold weather in this Leyda Valley? The main thing is because we are so close to the Pacific Ocean, and our Pacific Ocean is very, very cold. So for people that go to the holidays in summer period, it's a nightmare because you put the feet of your foot in the water and it's cold and it hurts your head. It's a nightmare to have holidays here in the beach. You cannot swim in the beach. For tourists, it's a nightmare, but for us as viticulture, it's a paradise, because thanks to this low temperature of the ocean, we have this strong maritime influence and low temperatures in the valley. And why is so cold, the Pacific Ocean? The main responsible is the Humboldt Current. This Humboldt Current originates or is born down south in the Antarctica. This cold air or cold current runs up through our country, and at the same time that it runs up, it goes into the inland. So it comes into the land. Here is Leyda Valley. So you can imagine this cold wind and cold breezes that come from the ocean leaves all the low temperatures here, the mist, the fog, the wind, and then this cold air start crossing the coastal mountain range. Here is Casablanca Valley. So it's still cold, but not as cold as Leyda Valley. And meanwhile, the air starts blowing in the width of our country. It starts to get warmer and warmer. That's why many people say, how come that in the same latitude you can have a fantastic valley as Leyda Valley for whites, but at the same latitude you can have Maipo Valley that is a fantastic valley for reds? Sometimes it's in the 33 parallel down south. Sometimes it's kind of confusing, but the answer is the same that I told you before the presentation. It's because our country is so narrow that the main difference It's not how north or how south the valley is located, but how close or far the valley is located from the Pacific Ocean or to the Andes Mountain. So here, as the cold air starts running inside the country, it gets warmer and warmer, and that's why you can have warm weather here in Maipo. In fact, if you are one day standing in Maipo and at the same day you go driving to Leyda Valley, you can have 32 Celsius degrees here, and you can have 8 Celsius degrees lower in Leyda Valley in the same latitude. It's crazy, but it's because of the Pacific Ocean. And this photograph, I'm not going deeper in technical things, but just to explain a little bit the soil composition that we have in our place. As we are in the west side of the coastal mountain range, this is the topography that we have. It's everything about small rolling hills with small blocks facing everywhere. We have some facing to the north, to the east, to the west. And because we are in the coastal mountain range, we have mainly the granitic soil. This photograph of the center is granitic soil. If we have to choose one soil that represents us, is this soil. Granito at the end is, well, this mother rock is very old. It has 120 million years ago, and it gives birth to pala that are very vibrant. And it happens that in Leyda Valley, the granitic soil is mixed with iron, that is a mineral, and as a mineral enhances the vibrancy. So imagine we are in a cold weather that is fantastic for having precursors and aromatic grape varieties mixed with this kind of soil that is granito, that gives vibrancy palate. It's just a win-win situation. And then again, the people can understand why this kind of terroir is good for wines. The other kind of soil that we have is this one in the left side, that is red clay. The red clay is decomposed in this area, and it gives palate that are a little bit more creamy texture and smooth. It's nice. It's another kind of palate. And at the right side, we have this white soil that you can guess that is limestone. We have very little amount of this. Only 1% of our vineyard is limestone, and it is because we have some soils that were down in the ocean about 10 million years ago. So this is like maritime terrace that originates this kind of soil that we leave it for the premium or icon wines that we do. So this is the topography that we have. It's just super fascinating because normally the bigger valleys in Chile are almost flat, like Maipo, for example. But here is everything about small rolling hills. And at the end, it's very nice to work with this because you have different exposure. As you see, not all the rows runs from north to south as normally vineyards do. Here we have a lot of disorientation if you see that is east to west. And why is that? Because in the back we have the ocean, so we allow the air to blow into the rows and dry the free water that we have in the cluster and in the leaves. Because we are so close to the Pacific Ocean, we have a lot of mist, and our main nightmare is the botrytis. We do have a lot. So having this kind of orientation of the rows allows us to use the wind as a natural tool to combat the botrytis.
It's probably worth explaining, Vivianna, but botrytis is, for those of you that aren't gardening aficionados, because I'm definitely not, but it's like a kind of mold that you can get a good kind of botrytis that makes Sauterne, for example, and sweet wines, but you can get a bad kind as well, which is kind of like mildew type effect on you really don't want that in your vineyard at all. So it's really helpful to have the breezes that Vivianna is talking about. We just have one question, Vivianna, that might be useful at this point from Gavin, who's asking how high the vineyard is in meters while you're talking about the topography.
It's not that high. It's only 300 meters. It's very slopey, but in general, it's 300 meters over the sea level. Navarrete is good. Yes, it's good, but in a small quantity. We have, in fact, Riesling planted, and the Riesling, the cluster is very, very small and tiny, and it's the first, it's the last block that we have planted, and it falls into the Maipo River. It's the first block that receives all the mist from the ocean, and it does have a little bit of botrytis. We leave, I would say, 3% of the botrytis. I don't like a lot of botrytis because, you know, at the end, we try to make the wine that is more citrus and that shows the maritime influence. And once you have a lot of botrytis, it hides those aromas and make the Riesling too sweet and with a lot of confitures. So we manage a little percentage to have a nice complexity, but I would say the biggest challenge because of our cold weather is by far this fungus, the botrytis, and sometimes the powdery mildew. The powdery mildew is another fungus that arrives to the plant when the cluster is green. It's just in the setup of the fruit, we have the powdery mildew. Then when the cluster is getting sugar and ripening, we have the botrytis. So because of this weather that is so cold, one of the best things that we have in Sauvignon Blanc that you can imagine is the low ripening process. So in valleys that they are starting the harvest in Sauvignon Blanc the second or third week of February, here in this valley, Leyda Valley, we're harvesting the third week of March. It's 3 weeks or almost 1 week of difference, and it's just because the low temperatures. So the Sauvignon Blanc earns sugar very slow in time. The natural acid is very high, that is not usual, not common in Chile, and we like that. We try to keep all the freshness and the crunchy acidity natural of this place. And the aromas, definitely the precursors of aromas is really high because of the climate. So at the end, what we try to do with Sara when we make the blending is really try to pick up all these flavors that are citrus, like grapefruit, lime, mandarin, and maintain, of course, all of these aromas in the wines. And in general, if you have to describe how the Sauvignon Blanc is from this valley, but not only the Sauvignon Blanc, but also the other varieties as Chardonnay, Sauvignon Gris, Pinot Noir, they will always, all of them will have these herbal aromas. It's something typical of this place that sometimes people don't get, that Chile can have a place that have this kind of aromas, but it's just because the cold climate that benefits with this weather. So in this, I'm finishing before jumping into the wine. In general, Leyda Winery, of what we do, 75% of what we do is Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir. Those are our flagship grape varieties that sometimes people abroad think, how you are a Chilean winery, how are you working with those varieties? Well, we do what the nature gives us, and it's cool climate grape varieties. So there is the center, our focus, but we also do Chardonnay, we do Riesling, we do Sauvignon Gris, that is beautiful. And in reds, we do Pinot Noir, of course, and a little bit of Syrah, cool climate Syrah.
Vivianna, I know. Oh, sorry. Before you talk about the wines, I was going to say you've just started harvesting our wine, the Irresistible wine, yesterday as well. So, and I know somebody's just asking, how's the harvest looking so far? I believe it's a bit of a smaller harvest this year, but maybe if you could talk a little bit about what it's looking like for you. I know it's early.
Yeah, actually, it looks a very, very interesting season. Yesterday, it's true, we started harvesting the first crush for Sauvignon Blanc. Is the clone 242 for Irresistible Sauvignon Blanc. Only one track. The wine is, the juice is beautiful, it's green, it's perfect. This season has been cool. It has been delayed 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks compared to last year. That last year already was a cold vintage. And what happened this year is that we are coming from a spring that it was from last year. Remember the season we measure from spring to April. So we are coming from a very rainy year, rainy spring. We received this last season 500 millimeters of rainfall. Remember, I just told you that in this area, normally we have 250 millimeters. Well, the season started with 500 millimeters of rainfall. So the soils have a good amount of water. This turned out in high canopy. We have a lot of vigor this year. So it was a challenge in terms of health because we have to manage the botrytis. But we have a very low temperatures in spring, so it turned into a very low yield season. We have seen that the Pinot Noir is 30% down in yields, so tiny clusters with tiny berries. And we are just starting with Sauvignon Blanc, but we are looking that it will be dropped down 10% in the yields. The clusters are smaller, are not long, smaller, and the berries are very tiny. The good thing is that the quality is impressive because you have less yield, more concentrated grapes and more concentrated aromas. So we're happy in the winemaking, but in the business, I don't know the numbers, how it's gonna be. But so far, it looks very, very good quality, so we are happy. Well, in this picture, we just wanted to speak a little bit about Tomás Rivera. He's our viticultor. This is our vineyard. You can see beautiful landscape. And Tomás Rivera, he has been working with us for 12 years. Sara met him when she was here in Chile, and he's just fascinating. I always like to speak about him because sometimes people think that the wines are made only in the cellar, but in our case, I have a super friend in the vineyards that he knows perfectly where the wines, each wine comes from. He knows which are our favorite blocks. So it's just fantastic to have him as a partner in the work.
And I know it looks a bit odd because he's standing in holes most of the time, but he spends a lot of time digging holes deliberately so that he can understand the soil. He's really passionate about just all the different plots that we work with.
Exactly. We're kind of nerds, Sara. We like clonal selection. We like studying the soil. I think at the end, it's the only way to improve the quality of the wines year per year. And that is our goal. I mean, the valley is 25 years old, but we have vineyards that are 10 years old and 8 years old. So we are still learning. And I think just that is just fantastic when you are in a profession, when you say there's no recipe, there's nothing to copy, every harvest is different. And when you see the potential of the place and the vineyard, is super fascinating to realize that. So I don't know if you want to jump over the wine, Sara?
Yeah, I thought also we maybe just explain a little bit about how we make them together, Vivianna, because that might be interesting for people as well. I found my notes from the last vintage we did. And just to explain, it's not just one wine we look at. We're not just like, oh, they're all the grapes, harvest them, make the wine, that's it. Vivianna obviously works with lots of little plots of grapes within the vineyards and then makes wines from each of these plots separately, and then we taste them all and come up with a final blend to create a style that we think is worthy of being irresistible. It's consistent, it's what people expect. So if you find it's a wine that you like, that you can come back and have it again, and it's not going to taste completely different. But as Vivianna said, we're also having to deal with different seasons. Some years it can be really warm and you get a lot more tropical fruit. Sometimes it's a lot cooler and it's more citrusy. We work with different acidities. So just to give you an idea, when we were coming up with the last blend, I found my notes, Vivianna, we did 14% of number 1. So we had various wines that we were blending together, 22% of number 2, 13% of number 3, 20% of number 4, 13% of number 5, and 18% of number 6. So it is like a little bit like cooking to create the perfect recipe of the wine with all the tools that we can use of the wines that Vivianna is making. And that's what we'll try to do again when this new harvest comes in for the next year's wine.
And I may say that Sara is a very good student. So she's not happy even if even if we work with 4 alternatives, Sara is never happy. And she makes me work and work until she says, okay, this is the blend. I love her. It's super nice to work with somebody like this, because at the end you push yourself in trying to not to find the perfect Sauvignon Blanc in terms of aroma that you will say, of course, the wine, you can like it, but then comes the second analysis. Is the wine showing the place? So it's not only making a citrus Sauvignon Blanc, juicy and fresh, but Is it showing the salty character or the maritime influence? And I think that is a good target to try to show not only a nice Sauvignon Blanc, but try to forget about Malbrand. It's not of course, it's not a sunset. It's from Chile, but it's not only Chile. It's a cool coastal climate with a maritime influence. How can you show that in the bottle? And I think that's a good exercise and a nice target to try to blend and to see. And it's not just looking to a Sauvignon Blanc that has a bright acidity and crunchy, but also try to have some creamy texture in the wine, because we like to have that in the bottle. So the exercise is really interesting.
So feel free to join us with tasting the wine if you like at home, but we'll talk about it a bit more anyway. And I know we'll talk a little bit about food matching and answer some more questions as well. I'm just going to pour my wine.
So this is the bottle of the Sauvignon Blanc. We're actually with the 2023 harvest. It's under screw cap that we like a lot because it really preserves the fresh aromas. And of course, using screw cap, it allows you to use less sulfur in the bottling. The sulfur is this inert gas that you use to avoid oxidation of the wine. And also the sulfur kills all the yeast or the bacteria that you could have in your wine that, of course, you don't have it. The blending process sometimes takes like 3 hours. Sometimes, yeah, I think 3 hours.
Yeah, about 3 hours. Yeah, and we look at the current wine, so we'll look at where the vintage is from the year before and have that side by side, and also talk about the vintage and what we need to do to try and get something consistent that reflects the vintage as well and the place, as Vivianna says. So if you're tasting the wine now, you might have tasted a lot of wine from New Zealand, Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand before, and I think it's perhaps interesting, Vivianna, to talk a bit about why Chilean Sauvignon is different, but specifically Leyda Sauvignon as well, and how it's different in style to if you're used to having Sauvignon from Marlborough, for example, which is 24% of the Sauvignon we're drinking over here in the UK.
In general, I would say the Sauvignon Blanc that comes from this specific place that is Leyda Valley normally will have in the front nose or in the first place this herbal character that I like a lot. Sometimes it's like fresh cut grass, but it's these fresh herbs that stands in the first place. And then in the second layer, it comes this like lime and mandarin and grapefruit that is very, very present. And also some salty notes, I would guess, I will get. The vineyard is at 12 kilometers from the ocean, and it's incredible. When you're standing there, you can smell the sea salt that comes from the ocean, and I'm sure it gets stuck in the skin of the berries, and then it's transmitted into the wine. Because I've seen that we have this salty character in all of the varieties, not only in the Sauvignon Blanc. And the way that we do this Sauvignon Blanc is that, well, some of the grapes are harvested by hand, others by machine. Here in the cellar, we destem. We don't do crush, we just destem, and then we press a soft pressing up to 1 bar, so we obtain the best quality juice, and then we decant, we clean the juice with pectolytic enzyme to get to 100 NTU is the turbidity that you can get in the juice. You can choose the turbidity that you want. In some parcels, we obtain 100 NTU, in another 70. And then the fermentation is done 100% in stainless steel tank, but we are very picky with the temperature. I think to do a good Sauvignon Blanc, you have to be a witch, una bruja, with the temperatures. Try to ferment as low as you can, because in that way, you oblige the yeast to work slowly in time and develop all the precursors of the aromas. If you ferment at high temperatures at 18 Celsius degrees, your fermentation is going to be short and you're going to have a wine that is not very complex. But if you ferment at 13 Celsius degrees, the fermentation can last 18 or 20 days, and you have a beautiful, nice complexity in aromas, but also in the palate with some creamy texture. So we do that. And after the fermentation that is long, we take the wine, the finished wine from the lees, keeping only the fine lees, and then we play with batonnage for 4 or 5 months before bottling. So the idea is to arrive early into your market with a fresh vintage, but having care to work with the lees to have a nice creamy texture that I think you can get in the wine.
So the lees is all the dead yeast cells, which doesn't sound very attractive, but if you work to stir them up, it gives that creaminess, and I think that also helps with the acidity. So it's not too. Some Sauvignons can be really sharp, but I think Vivianna is a good witch, as she says, and it helps get a lovely combination of that texture and aromas, and it just makes it a bit more friendly, a bit that creamy mid palate. It just gives it, yeah, it's not too biting.
Mm. And that's a good challenge as well, how to balance the bright and crisp acidity, as Sarah said, with a nice texture, because sometimes people don't feel happy having a super crispy Sauvignon Blanc, but having this both, the alternative of playing with the texture of the Sauvignon Blanc is important.
Well, I see you've converted Michelle, who says she doesn't usually like Sauvignon, but she likes this one. She says this one's lovely, so thank you.
Thank you. And if we had to look for pairings for this Sauvignon Blanc, Sarah, what would you suggest?
Well, so we've got on this page, we've got England versus Chile. So we've got fish and chips, because you've got that sort of tanginess of the vinegar on the chips, the saltiness as well. You've got the nice acidity, bright acidity of the wine, which sort of cuts through. You've got the fattiness of on the fish. I think it works really well. But Vivianna's side has got ceviche. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to try ceviche. It's raw fish that they cure in lime juice. It's beautiful. If you have a go at making it, it's delicious. You just sort of put lots of lime juice and a bit of chili, I think, as well, Vivianna, sometimes on the fish, and it sort of just cures it in the lime juice, and it's lovely. Yeah, definitely recommends that.
And it's super nice to have this green chili in the preparation, because I think the Sauvignon Blanc has a lot of green chili in the nose as well. So there's a natural pairing with the aromas. Yeah.
We had a question as well about asparagus. Asparagus is actually, I've heard it referred to before as a wine killer, because it actually makes wine taste a bit metallic. But yeah. I think Sauvignon Blanc is one that can kind of work through that with the acidity and that, particularly I'd say a Leyda style, because it has got that more green grassy edge. I think it can not be killed by asparagus. Definitely.
Exactly. Definitely. And we have here another pairing suggestion for Sauvignon Blanc that is super nice. We always like to pair the wines with local preparation or local food. And it happens that Leyda Valley not only is a paradise for growing vines, but also is a paradise for berries. So we have a lot of plantations of blueberries and of strawberries as well. And this is a pairing that you should definitely try at home, to buy strawberries, have sea salt. And so you give a bite to the strawberry, you put a little bit of sea salt, eat it, and then have a sip of Sauvignon Blanc. And you will see that the acidity enhances. Wow, already the Sauvignon Blanc has a bright acidity, but when you do this pairing, it's like super long and more persistent and more juicy. So the invitation is to try it. It sounds crazy, but it works really.
Okay, it definitely works. The first time I went to the vineyard, we actually sat in the vineyard and did this. And I know it sounds a bit like tequila, but with a strawberry and instead of your lime and wine. But it really works. So definitely give it a go. It sounds crazy, but worth it.
Strawberries, black pepper, and balsamic vinegar. You were saying, Sarah, before about the pepper. I will try it. I will go for that. So, and let's go to the second wine this is our rosé. So Sauvignon Blanc comes exclusively from the Leyda Valley, that is this cold climate area that we have showed to you in the photographs. The Rosé Sauvignon Blanc is made, as Sarah said before, 95% from Sauvignon Blanc and 5% of Pinot Noir. The Sauvignon Blanc comes from different valleys, but cool climate valleys in Chile. So the biggest sources of fruit in this Rosé Sauvignon comes from Leyda Valley and from Casablanca that I show in the first picture, the Google map here. Casablanca is in the east side of the coastal mountain range and Leyda Valley is in the west side of the coastal mountain range. So they are both cool climate area, but Casablanca is a little bit warmer because the cold current that comes from the Pacific Ocean has to cross the mountain and arrive into this place. So just it's a little bit warmer than Leyda, but it's still considered cold climate. So we harvest the Sauvignon Blanc from these valleys. And the way that we do is a traditional Sauvignon Blanc, also fermenting low temperatures. And at the same time, we harvest the Pinot Noir. The Pinot Noir comes from the Central Valley. We harvest early, looking for low Brix to have low alcohol. And the style of Pinot Noir that we try to do is a fresh Pinot Noir with little extraction. All the grapes are destemmed, softly crushed. It's fermented in stainless steel tank, but with very little extraction. The idea here is to have a Pinot Noir that is more fruity than structured, and keeping the bright acidity of the Pinot Noir. And once the wine is dry, it's taken immediately off the skins to avoid any tannins or any bitterness, and it ages in stainless steel tank. So just in the moment of the blend, when Sarah makes the blend, the two varieties are put together. But the aging period is made separately, the Sauvignon Blanc in stainless steel tank and the Pinot Noir in stainless steel tank. Sometimes we put a little bit of oak in the Pinot Noir just to soften a little bit the palate, but the idea is to put them together only in the blending moment. And here, if you see the wine, the idea is to have a rosé that is very, very pale. We call it like a blush. It's just a touch of reddish in the wine. So it's almost like a salmon pale color, which is like very delicate. Sarah likes this color, so she asked for these tones. And if you look into the nose, although it's 95% of Sauvignon Blanc is totally different of the pure Sauvignon Blanc. And in the nose, you see there's a little bit more like ripe aromas with these herbs going in the second place. But you feel a little bit the Pinot Noir in there. It has some reddish fruit, but it's definitely sweeter in aromas. And in palate, I would say that it has more structure, like it has a good entrance, a little bit creamier than the Sauvignon Blanc. It still have this juiciness going around, but definitely it's not linear as the Sauvignon Blanc. So it's impressive how you can have, although you say it's 95% of Sauvignon Blanc, you can think it's very similar to the Sauvignon Blanc Irresistible, but it's totally different products. I know it has a source of grapes from another valley, from Casablanca, but it's super interesting to see two different kind of wines. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. It's just different choices for different food or for different life opportunities.
So we had a question about why this one doesn't say Leyda on, but hopefully that explains it, about because we're taking grapes from different areas, because the whole point of why it says Leyda because it's from there, but because we're working with, as Vivianna explains, fruit from different places, this can't be Leyda as well, but it has Leyda in. And I think we have a couple more questions about the, I know Terry has put a list, by the way, if anybody needs to find the rosé, because it's not in as many stores. The Sauvignon is in all our stores, and the rosé is in about 700 stores. There's a list for you to, if you couldn't find it and want to be able to find it, we've popped it in the chat for you.
And for the pairing, Sara, of the rosé, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so we were talking about this before. I think it's quite a bit of a savoury rosé. It's good with food, but we think that it would go well with, but completely down to you. If you want to have it with a chicken jalfrezi, go for it. But we're suggesting perhaps going with prawns. Or with a grilled chicken, salmon as well is lovely. But it does have a sort of slightly vegetal character, a savoury character as well. So if you had like a sort of roasted vegetable mains dish, then I think it would equally work well for vegetarians. I don't think Vivianna's come up with a crazy pairing for this one yet, but we'll have to try next time I'm in Chile.
No, I have to imagine myself. So for the next time, I will come with a crazy pairing. But I love the texture that it has in the palate, and also it's a little bit spicy, the blush. Don't you get it? A little bit? It's creamy and spicy. I like it.
Yeah, I guess that's the character from the Pinot Noir. Yeah. And I think that's interesting, as Vivianna was saying, it's so different making when you're growing red grapes and working with red grapes to make a rosé than making a Pinot Noir, which Vivianna does wonderful Pinot Noirs as well. That she's handling them differently.
Somebody asked for the oak treatment of the Pinot Noir that goes into the rosé. It's staves. We use a percentage of staves, but light toast, so that there's not to add smokiness. It's just to work a little bit the tannins in the Pinot Noir.
Okay, so I think we are just trying to answer some of the other questions that have come in. People were asking, well, how long would this keep for if you don't drink it all in one go? Which I'm not suggesting you do. But I think it would be okay, just open for a couple of days, but after that it starts to lose the aromas and fruit. So I would try and drink it in that, just invite some friends around. That's and drink it within that time frame, I think. And then we also had a question about, Vivianna, how, if you're using the winds of the vineyard to help against frost at all.
Sorry, if we use the wind?
To help with frost in the vineyards.
Yeah. We don't have frost because we are so close to the ocean that it acts like a buffer effect. And it's super weird that we have frost. I remember in 2013 that we have frost, but it was 12 years ago. It's weird. The minimum temperature normally that we have in the vineyard is 2 Celsius degrees.
20 degrees, yeah. I think
2 degrees over 0 is the minimum.
2 degrees over 0, so, sorry. Yeah.
It's the minimum.
Yeah. I know Terry's just said that if anybody does want to ask their question in person, you're welcome to do so. And I think we've got Roger with his hand up who might want to come on and ask a question. Feel free to do so. You should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question. Perhaps we'll come back. Oh, and Renuka, we've got somebody there. Terry's going to unmute you.
Yes, I'm not very keen fan of rosé, but I like Sauvignon Blanc. Sorry for my accent, it's French because I'm French. But rosé, is it a bit metallic or is it just normal? I haven't tried actually. Would you recommend me the rosé, the last one we just spoke? Sarah?
So would I recommend this rosé if you didn't like rosé?
Yeah.
I think it depends what puts you off rosé, because some people I've met just say they don't like rosé, but actually that's because they've only ever had sweet rosé. And this is definitely a dry rosé. And if you like Sauvignon Blanc, then I think that helps you with it, because you can almost forget about the colour a bit and think, well, it's still got the character of Sauvignon, it's still got the aromas, but it happens to be pink, and that's yeah. So maybe a first one to try, by all means.
Does it go well with the curries?
I think it could go well with curries, but it's got good acidity. It might work quite well, I think, with a slightly fruity curry, like, or maybe a korma or something.
Oh,
Feel free to try it and let us know.
all right.
Yep. Always looking for crazy food matches.
Thank you.
We got Roger. Are you able to ask your question now, or if anyone has got any more questions they want to ask, do put them in. Oh, we've got some more coming in now into the Q&A. So I'll try and get through them for. So we've talked about the harvest a little bit so far.
Of the climate change. Our area, I read a question that asked for if the area was affected by El Niño.
El Niño, yes.
Yeah, we actually are experimenting the El Niño, and that's why we had a lot of rainfall. We had double of the rainfall in our vineyard the last season. And you know, I would say that I've been working in the winery for 16 years. And when I just started, it was every season, the 5th of March, we started with the harvest. Every year, the 5th of March, we started with the harvest. But since 2013, it started to be unpredictable. So we have had seasons or harvest vintages that has been warm, even though we are in a cold area, like 2017. In 2017, we started the harvest in February. I was almost in my holiday and had to return back to the job immediately. And it was 2017, 2019, and 2020 warmer. And we have had crazy cold vintages like 2021, where we have rainfall in January. In January, the grapes are ripening, and we have never had rainfall in that month. And it happened in 2021. It has been one of my most challenging vintages. So what I'm trying to express is that the climate changes, we have been living it in terms that there's no recipe for the vintage, and we are seeing that every year you can be surprised by anything, or you can have a rainfall, strong rainfall in January, or in 2016 we had strong rainfall in April that in Chile everybody got crazy. We have a lot of rotten grapes, rotten amount of million of kilos rotten because of the rainfall. So it has been a challenge, and the answer or what you learn about that is that you cannot forget that you are working with nature. So you have to be eye-open and make analysis and be constantly in the vineyard, observing, looking, reaching, and that's a way to go to the flow. But yeah, it's something really interesting. And somebody asked about the new places to plant. Well, I would say that in Chile, in our Chilean industry, many wineries are looking into the south of Chile. There's a lot of potential and a lot of lands that are being unexplored. Actually, in our Leyda winery is part of a big group, is part of VSPT, and one of the wineries there is working in a beautiful project down south in Chile, in Mayeco Valley, working with Mapuche people, with indigenous community. It's a fascinating project of social sustainability. And it's in a place where we receive 1,200 millimeters of rainfall. It's like, I don't know, Burgundy. It rains a lot. So many people in the Chilean industry are looking to the south, looking for cooler climate, more water, more rainfall. I think the future is in the coast line in Chile and down south, definitely.
I think Mike was asking as well if you're doing anything different because of climate change, if you've in the last 10 years, Vivianna, how you're working differently in the vineyards.
I would say that more canopy protection to the clusters, avoiding sunlight. Maybe in the past we were scared about the fogs and the humidity, but now we look that we have a lot of sunlight. So we are protecting the clusters with the leaves, even in Pinot Noir, we like that. And the other good tool that we have learned, especially in Pinot Noir, is to work with whole cluster. Sometimes people think it's only because of a trend, but it happens here that in Chile we have a lot of sunlight. It's not filtered sunlight. So when you have a lot of sunlight, the aromas in Pinot Noir can turn more into strawberry or candy aromas or more sweet aromas. And when you use whole cluster, when you put the stems in your tank and you ferment with the stems, it cuts the sweet aromas and it helps you to have Pinot Noir more herbal, more fresher. And we're doing that practice in Pinot Noir and in Syrah as well to avoid these climate changes.
I know we've got a couple I can answer very quickly before the people who want to ask the questions ask. One is what percentage, Chris and Julie asking what percentage is Pinot Noir in the rosé? It's 5% Pinot Noir, 95% Sauvignon Blanc. And Penny's asking for what do you think the biggest difference is between New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc and Chilean Sauvignon Blanc, Leyda Sauvignon Blanc here? I would say, and Vivianna, you can chip in as well, that the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is more tropical. Think passion fruit, guava. So that's slightly on that fruit spectrum with more sharp acidity, very, very pointy acidity. Whereas this Sauvignon is more grassy, think sort of cut grass, for a bit herbal, and the acidity is still high and racy, but a bit more integrated. That's how I describe it. But I think if you agree, Vivianna, she's been training me.
No, that was the perfect answer. I totally agree. And also I think that Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc is more shouty, if I am using correctly the word. It's like you open the bottle and it's super happy, super shiny, super shouty, compared to Leyda Sauvignon Blanc that is a little bit more shy, not shy, but maybe this salty character with the herbal is more subtle. Subtle is the word. I don't want to use the word elegance, but subtle is soft in the aromas.
I think it's good. Right, we've got a couple of people wanting to ask questions on the screen. Roger first, or sorry, or Renuga.
Yes, Sarah. Yes, Emilia. I used to work in a field like apple field and blueberries, and I had the chance to work in a vineyard as well. And I've been tasting wines, a lot of wines actually in one of the cellar in France. Actually, I just wanted to share that. Thank you so much.
Oh, great. So you appreciate it's very hard work. I used a few of my holidays to go and work in vineyards, and it's it's a labor of love, I tell you, and you don't get very much sleep. It's a lot of hard work, as Vivianna knows. Do we have someone else with their hand up as well? Sorry, Francesca?
Yeah.
Or Francisca, sorry.
Well,
sorry.
I want to ask, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you, Vivianna. What I want to ask is to Vivianna, like considering the reception of the wines, Leyda wines in the UK market, do you think there's more potential for introduction of new varieties in the UK?
Did you hear that okay, Vivianna? So do you think there's more potential for different varieties from Leyda in the UK?
More potential of varieties that we work here in the UK. Well, we do a Riesling that I think is just fascinating, but it's so difficult to sell because normally people don't pick that Chile can be a place or a home for Riesling, and it's a super pity because the wine is expressive, it's citrus, it's mineral, it's bone dry, it has a beautiful palate. I hope that we can get into your market with that kind of wine. And also we do a Sauvignon Gris that is from the same botanical family of the Sauvignon Blanc, but it's different. It's a little bit more creamy. It's not as sharp as the Sauvignon Blanc, and we haven't get into your market yet. Not Leyda Winery, but other wineries in our valley are doing good work with Cabernet Franc and Grenache, Garnacha. So the valley has a lot of potential. We will never do Carmenère or Cabernet Sauvignon because it's not the place for those grapes. But I think we have a lot of potential. We just need to keep pushing and show what we can do and we can deliver.
Perfect.
We had a question as well as how do we decide which stores the rosé goes into. We in Co-op we have many different stores. There's a store in every postal code, but we have to try and put the right wines in the right stores. So it does depend on what people are buying in those stores already, what we think those stores need. So at the moment, the rosé, like I say, is only in about 700 stores, and we started it as a bit of a trial to see how it's going. It is growing slowly. Hopefully, we've got some new fans here tonight, but it would be lovely to get it into more stores in future as we see the more demand and people getting into it. And we are trying to grow our rosé offering, so hopefully you found a new wine you like with the rosé in answer to that one. Okay, we've got a couple more questions, I think. Vivianna, Rowena is asking if you do vineyard tours. I don't know if you go on holiday there, if people can visit you, not you personally, but as in visit the vineyards.
Not in Leyda winery. Unfortunately, we haven't developed the tourism yet, but there's a lot of wineries in Leyda Valley that are open to tourism. Garcés Silva is one of them. It's beautiful.
I definitely recommend visiting a winery if you can. I mean, we've even got some great ones here in the UK, just to give you a feel for what's involved, and it definitely feels more connected with the wine. I think I've answered all the questions I can see. Does anybody else want to ask any more? If they want to pop any in the Q&A, or if they want to come off and ask on camera, when you go.
Yeah, I just want to say, since Brexit, is anything has been market has been okay, or it's been fine? How is since Brexit between UK and France or other European countries?
I think since Brexit, there's more complexity, certainly in the imports and the paperwork and admin that's needed. Certainly, our sales for Chile have grown since then and continue to do well, so it's not been affected. No. And do we stock the wine year round? Absolutely, we do, Chris. We, as we said at the beginning, we've been selling the Sauvignon now since 2014. What obviously changes is the vintage. So obviously, Vivianna's literally started harvesting for us, but harvesting yesterday, and some of that fruit will end up in bottles in Co-op stores a few months down the line. So we'll watch this space. And in terms of, David, your question, can this be a regular event? Absolutely. We already have one planned for April, the 24th of April. We've got our Rioja producers coming to share a white Rioja and a red Rioja, for those of you that would like to join that. But otherwise, I think we might have to leave it there if we've answered all the questions. Oh, we've got one more hand up, sorry.
Somebody asked for the age of the vines. We have one vineyard that it was planted in 2008 and the other one in 2010. So they're adolescent vines. They still have much to give and much to improve.
Renigo, do you have one more question? Simbacat. Okay. Sorry, we're trying to unmute somebody. I think it's just Renigo then. Renigo, sorry, do you have one more question?
Yeah, I'm just asking, is it to have a wine which is very old is better, or a wine very recent one is better to drink?
Well, that's a good question. But very old wines or very young wines, they both have their strengths and weaknesses.
Yes.
Old vines can be more resistant to disease and can give more concentration of fruit. Young vines tend to produce more, but then they're a bit weaker when it comes to diseases and maybe not have the intensity and complexity of fruit from an older vine.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
And I would like I would like to jump into that question saying that Sauvignon Blanc ages beautifully when it's planted in the correct area and when it has good analysis. We do many different Sauvignon Blanc in Leyda Winery, and I have tried Sauvignon Blanc of 10 years old, and it's just fascinating. Some people think Sauvignon is everything about trying them young and fresh, but give it a chance. Good Sauvignon Blanc can age properly, even under screw cap. They age beautifully, and in the palate they turn more into this creamy texture without losing the bright acidity, but of course it's not as sharp as when they are young, but they definitely goes into this creamy texture and more spicy. So it's really interesting to give it a chance.
Great. So just a couple of other bits from us then, and I think we might wrap up for the evening. If you've got any feedback, and it's great to see some positive comments in the chat, thank you very much. You can email us at joinin@coop.co.uk. It'd be great to hear your ideas. If there's particular themes you want us to talk about, producers you want to meet, wines you want to hear more about, do let us know. And any feedback on how we can improve these sessions for you, do let us know as well. Bear in mind, this is the first time we've done it since 2021. Appreciate some of the technology is new for you. We're also doing a prize draw tonight. So Terry is picking a name at random from the attendees, and you'll win a bottle of the rosé and a bottle of the Sauvignon. As a thank you from us for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thanks, Sarah, for the opportunity. Take care.
Thank you, Vivianna, for joining, and I'll let you get back to the harvest. And Terry says the name is Sheena Hulse. I'm sorry if I put it wrong. Sheena, you're the winner of the wine, so we'll be in touch with you, okay, separately. Okay, thanks very much for everybody for joining, and have a good rest of your evening. Okay,
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.